Welcome to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature This Week is sponsored by Mon Health Systems, as well as SEVA WV and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. In today's first segment, we welcome Delegate Moore Capito of Kanawha County and Chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Moore, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you this morning.
Also with us is West Virginia News Government Affairs reporter Charles Young. Welcome, Charles, and let's kick off today's show. More, let's talk about, we're in the final few days of this year's session. What would you say are the biggest accomplishments so far?
I think you have to say that the biggest accomplishment so far was the one that was signed yesterday by the governor, providing tax relief to West Virginians. We're talking about the largest tax cut in the history of West Virginia. I know that we wanted to reach much further, but we were able to get substantial relief to the people of West Virginia, and so I've got to rank that as number one, and I'm incredibly proud that we were able to get that over the line and get that over the line with plenty of time to spare.
What about anything else that comes to mind? What about the education bill? I know the Third Grade Success Act is still out there hanging. What are your thoughts about that bill?
Well, I think one of the things that we've identified as critical for the future of West Virginia, if we want to continue to grow in a meaningful way and to attract people here and retain people in West Virginia, is that we have to ensure that our K through 12 systems are sound. That means obviously public school, that means private school, that means homeschool. So I think that you've really had some meaningful pieces of legislation that have come through our Education Committee. We've had some come through our Finance Committee. We've even had some in the Judiciary Committee to try to find the spots where we can have the greatest impact. You look at one of the bills that ran early on, providing for more assistants and more teachers' aides into some of those early classroom learning environments so we can provide the supplemental help that we need for our children that we saw through those test scores are falling a bit behind in reading and math. That's got to be absolutely critical. Another piece of that is ensuring that we're getting high-quality educators in front of our students. And of course, we've provided another teacher pay raise this year, which I think was earned. So we're definitely trying to make notable strides in that area because I think everybody knows that that's a critical piece for growth.
Been a little bit of pushback on the PEIA situation, and that's been out there. No increases in premiums and things for 12 years. What's your take on that? And is that where we need to go?
That is always a difficult discussion, and I'll tell you what. One of the most important things that we can do in West Virginia is ensure that our workers that work for the state of West Virginia and provide a service to the state of West Virginia get the deal that they signed up for. And part of that deal is getting great benefits. And one of those benefits is health care. Some of it's retirement as well. But what we had discovered is we sort of year after year after year were getting out of scale or a little out of whack, if you will, on the percentages of coverage. And, part of that's due to the cost of health care. Part of that is due to the funding source. So, there was a group of legislators that have been meeting, I think, from the summer and throughout the session to try to find a way to stabilize an insurance system that is a critical piece of attracting good state workers, to try to find a fix so that it can stay afloat.
One of the things that's been discussed by our past guests has been the three-legged stool approach of the tax cut, the pay raise, and then the PEIA increase. Kind of being able to say, hey, yeah, we had to raise these, but we're cutting your taxes and raising your pay. Do you think that's enough to keep state employees, and especially I think education unions seem to be the most up in arms?
Well, I don't know if We always want to do more. We always want to do more. We always want to have, higher raises. We definitely wanted to have a larger personal income tax reduction. But I think what you're seeing in this area and in many areas in West Virginia is a really good trend. We have been making methodical, I think, and cautious steps forward to put more money back in the pockets of West Virginians, and that includes state employees. So as we move forward, and we do so, I think, prudently, we're able to continue to provide more for less, if you will. Of course, we want to do it all at once, but we believe, you refer to the three-legged stool, that was a first step that we could take in the right direction. And I'm hopeful and frankly very confident that we are going to be able to come back, next year and the years that follow to try to supplement that and make it even better.
Down to the final few days, and Charles may have some more detailed questions on this as well, but are there some bills hanging out there that you think absolutely we've got to get these across the line?
Well, one that's actually probably not talked about that much, I think a critical bill that we have to do, and we've worked a lot on it in our committee on the judiciary, is the redistricting of these circuits. So just like we have redistricting for delegates and senators, every 2 years after those redistricting activities occur, the legislature's charged with reapportioning our circuits. So, it kind of sounds boring, but the administration of justice, number one, and ensuring that our court systems aren't clogged are critical to ensure that people are getting in and out of our facilities quickly. We know how our jail bills are skyrocketing right now. So all of these things really add up, but getting the sort of foundational government structure in place, I think, is super important. So that's one thing I think we've got to get over the line. I know the Senate's working on that right now. We have a little bit of a differing opinion, but I'm confident we will get there on that. There are tons, and what I've found out in my time in the legislature is even with this many days, we probably have the vast majority of bills left to have final action on them, and that's even before they go to the governor. So there are a lot of critical pieces of legislation out there right now, and you'll see a lot of them move within the next couple days as we trade messages.
Charles, do you have some specific bills you'd like to ask about there?
Well, I did want to do a couple of follow-ups on a couple of things you mentioned there more. First of all, you said, that you guys had wanted to reach much further with tax reform. Obviously, you're referring to, the governor's plan that the House started out with. What is next for tax reform? When we talked to the governor last week, he suggested, not waiting on these triggers. The idea of, if this is received well and implemented correctly, we could call a special session this summer, this fall, to implement further tax reform. What are you hearing on that?
One thing that I've learned is that the governor has done a fantastic job with driving business and driving investment in the state of West Virginia. We're seeing an incredible surplus in the billions for the first time ever. So I think that we can act, but to the governor's point, we'll have to see what those numbers look like. I know that there are others that would prefer to wait on the triggers that are set forth in the bill that we put in. But I think if we get to a meaningful number vis-a-vis sort of surplus as we go through the year, I think the quicker that we can act, the better. And folks that are looking at West Virginia from the outside, and I go back to this idea of trends. We look at the trends and the steps that we're taking, and we've been able to take steps forward without having had to take any steps back. And I think that's a testament to the legislature, that's a testament to the governor and the team that he's put around him.
Okay, well, and then I think we wanted to, kind of transition to talking about your gubernatorial campaign. I know that, that won't really start in earnest until next year, but the field is already filling up. There's a lot of conversation going around. So I wanted to hone in a little bit on, in your messaging, you've called yourself a West Virginia conservative. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you and why you felt the need to differentiate a West Virginia conservative.
I think West Virginians are proud. I think that we are unique. I don't subscribe to the notion that we need to sort of define ourselves as others have always tried to define us. We know in West Virginia that certain individuals look at us and have preconceived notions, but we're very proud of who we are and what we stand for. We stand for smaller government. We stand for a conservative, flat budget that we've seen has yielded results over the past years. And of course, we value energy. We've always been the energy experts in this country. Going back centuries in this state. And what I see is that we can be the future of energy. So let us be the energy experts and do what we're good at. And then finally, it's culture. In West Virginia, we have a unique culture. We take care of one another. We care about one another. And so I think my political philosophy is very much rooted in the culture that I was raised in. And I think it's unique, and that's why I brand it as a West Virginian conservative, because I think it's different than any other.
Okay. Well, like I said, I know that, the actual campaign season is a ways off, but tell us a little bit about your campaign plans. When do you plan to get into the full swing of it?
Well, I'm here in the Capitol right now, so one thing that I've tried to be obviously very mindful of is that I'm here to represent the people of the 55th and the people of the state of West Virginia to move the state forward and to strengthen West Virginia. But I would say probably Saturday at about 12:01 we'll be off and running.
Well, Moore, you mentioned.
Oh, I guess that would be. That would be Sunday morning. That would be Sunday morning at 12:01. I apologize.
Oh, that's
gotcha.
Understood. Moore, you mentioned energy. Do you think right now, because there's been some pushback with the green energy efforts, and I know that coal gets a little excitable, natural gas gets a little excitable. Do we have the right balance there, do you think, to push forward as the energy state of the future?
I do. I think I think in some instances it's taking, it's taking certain, whether it's industry or legislators or regions of the state, time to really find where they fit or how they feel about that. But I really do think that we're getting there. We've seen investments. You look at the one that just happened, obviously, huge announcement in Ravenswood on Saturday. There was a component of sort of future power generation there with Berkshire Hathaway. We know and respect and want to continue to grow our coal industry, and we know that that's going to be part of our portfolio for a long time to come. We see how important our gas industry is. I mean, we've got to continue to build these pipelines. But look at all the resources that we have sort of naturally, is the way I look at it. So the opportunity that we have there, and then the mines that we have that work in that industry, MINDS. We have very great expertise in power generation, and I think that we're going to really see that that's going to unlock a lot of doors and really put us in the map as we power the nation going forward.
We talked a little bit about education and the key there. Do you think we're doing enough to, my big concern coming out of the pandemic was the amount of time they were out of classrooms. Students were out of classrooms. Are we doing enough remedial work to help students catch up?
I think every West Virginian, and as a parent of two one of which was in the early ages when they were going to school and having to wear these masks, and he was trying to learn to talk. It's very concerning, and frankly, I don't know that we fully realize all of the setbacks that we may experience from those closures. I know that we don't ever want to do that again, of course, but we have to absolutely focus in on education, and early education especially. We know how critical, again, going back to it, reading and math is. I mean, kids learn to read, until they're in third grade, and then read to learn from there on out. So if they're not learning to read by third grade, we're already behind in most cases. And some people that'll differ on that time frame. But those are metrics that we need to shoot for. Those are metrics that are going to allow us to really springboard that next generation, because at the end of the day, if we want to grow from an economic standpoint, we know any company that's here or any company that wants to come here is going to look at the education system and where they're going to be able to educate their children. So it's got to be the top priority.
Are you confident that the K through 3 bill will make it through?
At this point, I hate to give levels of confidence, but I will. I'm actually going to leave this table and go check to see where that one is right now. I think that could be an important component, and I'm going to get back to you on that one. I hate to put predictions with this little of time frame, but as we say, it's a few days left, but it's a long time in legislative life.
Well, and that bill made drastic changes Monday evening, and then into Tuesday it got changed again. So it's been kind of all over the place here in the past few days. So I understand your unwillingness to predict the future on that one. Before we wrap up more, is there anything else you'd like to address with us?
Well, I just really appreciate you having me on. It's great to be able to talk about what we've been doing at the Capitol this year. There have been a lot of really great initiatives. We've taken steps to try to grow, going back to our energy sector, to try to grow our ability to attract carbon sequestration projects. The hydrogen hub creates incredible opportunities. These things don't always get written about, not because they're not important, but because they can be a little wonky. But the reason behind a lot of these pieces of legislation is to attract really new and forward-thinking industry to West Virginia, and we're making good strides.
Very good. Delegate Moore Capito of Kanawha County, and he is a Republican candidate for the governor of West Virginia coming up in 2024. Moore, thanks for joining us here at Legislature This Week. We're going to take a brief pause for an important message, and we'll be right back.
Your heart is in the best hands. MonHealth Heart and Vascular is the highest ranked cardiovascular program in the state of West Virginia by the American College of Cardiology. Choose MonHealth. Feel the difference.
Welcome to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature This Week is sponsored by MonHealth Systems, as well as SIVA WV and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. Today, we are joined by Delegate Yohe Garcia of Marion County. Joey, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here with you guys.
Also with us is West Virginia News Government Affairs reporter Charles Young. Charles, why don't you get the ball rolling here?
Hi, Joey. Good morning. Well, we were hoping that you could start by, as we're entering the final stretch of the session here, if you could reflect a little bit from the minority perspective. What is it like for you and your fellow Democrats to, operate in such an extreme minority against the supermajorities that we have? And, do you feel like your voices are still heard despite the numbers?
Yes, I think that I've been pleasantly surprised with the numbers that we've had this year, how much change we've been able to impact. And you talked a second ago about against, and I don't think that's how we start out. I think we try to find ways that we can find agreement and that we can find some common ground. And that's always been my style of legislating. And so, for example, this year, I'm the minority chair of the Judiciary Committee. We had a lot of bills come up through there. I think one major thing that we have to do as the minority party is to hold the other side accountable ask the tough questions, because a number of times if the chairman puts a bill on the agenda, the expectation from the members is it's going to pass. And so if we don't call out certain things, if we don't bring up witnesses, if we don't really analyze what it is that we're doing, things can slip through that have really unintended consequences for the people of the state of West Virginia. But at the same time, one thing in the Judiciary Committee, I've offered a decent number of amendments this year. Not one of them has failed. And so I think if we have some, at least in that committee, I know a good group of people that I feel like will listen to reason, that, there's some bills that are always about politics, but there are other bills that really are just about trying to create good government, a fair playing field for people. And in some degree, we've been able to either change bills for the better or stop some bad legislation from passing. I'll tell you one example was yesterday. We had this bill about it would really temper the public nuisance action. And there were a number of different questions about this, because this was the cause of action that allowed us to take pharmaceutical companies who had brought lots of drugs in the state of West Virginia, had really started the opioid crisis, and we were able to get hundreds of millions of dollars to try to help with remedying that issue. And the committee yesterday, in a bipartisan fashion, because there's only 3 Democrats out of 25 people, decided to vote it down. And again, I think that is one example where we can ask questions, call certain things out.
Okay, great. Well, one of the bills that I know you were a co-sponsor of, and you were, involved in, is HB 3018, the raising the age of consent for marriage. Talk a little bit about that, because I think some folks might not even know the background there. What's the issue we're actually addressing here?
Yes, so that bill is on that Senate Judiciary's agenda today. Hopefully it gets out of there, gets onto the floor, and can pass. But this is an important issue, because in the state of West Virginia, even somebody under the age of 12 with a parental consent and with an order from a judge can marry somebody. And the biggest issue is not teenage lovers, right? It's not people who are starry-eyed, 17 and 16. The biggest issue is young girls who might be, again, 14, 15, 16, marrying people that are over 4 years, some cases 40 years, older than they are. And this is an issue that's come up with respect to sex trafficking. And you think about a young girl who's 16 years old, doesn't even have the right to enter into a contract at that point in time. And a number of these marriages, I think it's interesting. We've had a number of grassroots activists who have brought out statistics about things like the divorce rate, which for somebody who gets married at the age of 16, I believe it was somewhere around 71% divorce rate. So this type of situation can really take, and it's not just women, but young men too, put them in a very vulnerable state. And so this bill would say 18 years old is the minimum to get married. And I think it's a good bill, and it's gotten bipartisan support from some of the most conservative people in the legislature, along with Kayla Young is the lead sponsor, and she's done a great job really pushing that forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you guys have both been very vocal about that on the floor. We followed the debate there. The next thing we wanted to move on to is, our kind of 3 interlocked initiatives that, the governor signed a big chunk of it yesterday, but how the PEIA bill, kind of interacts with the employee pay raise bill and how it all fits into our tax plan bill. We've spoken to, folks that helped craft that legislation over the course of our season here. Give us your perspective on those 3 initiatives. Do you think the public understands the fact that they're kind of daisy-chained together?
I think that there are a number of people who reached out about, I think, the draconian increases in premiums that are going to happen with the PEIA bill. I mean, 25% increase approximately per person, per family. And those individuals that have a spouse that may have available coverage elsewhere, doesn't mean it has to be as good coverage as PEIA. That person, that family, may have to pay approximately $2,500 more in premiums this year. And the the pay raises that have been passed, that's $2,300. So and that's taxed. And even though there may be a tax decrease, for most families that make between $30,000 and $60,000, you're looking at a couple $100. So those are the people, the middle class people, are going to get hit the hardest with this together. And I understand that there's a number of things with PEIA, stabilization that needs to happen. And also, I would say, too, that our hospitals, like Wheeling Hospital, decided earlier this year, if the problem wasn't fixed, that they were going to stop taking PEIA. So it's important that we kind of shore up the funds and we make appropriate payments. But we are at an all-time high in the amount of money, the surplus that we have, $2 billion. And to me, in the past, and I brought this up on the floor, back in 2016, we didn't have any money. We had a budget that we were trying to just figure out how to get to a black budget instead of being in the red. And we actually found a way to divert funds to make sure that we didn't increase premiums. And we've done that, and the governor promised he wouldn't increase premiums over the last 6 years and through the end of his term. That's a promise that's broken with this bill. And I don't know, I hope the governor still considers vetoing this, because I think that we can come back and find a better option. And as far as the tax cuts, I do think that budgets and any expenditures have been artificially lowered with the idea of let's create a buffer for this tax cut that was just passed and just signed into law by the governor. So it is all connected.
Joey, in regards to that, and I understand what you're saying, but in regards to that, the argument from the other side being non-state workers, okay, would be, since the Affordable Care Act and other influences on health care, premiums have skyrocketed in most people's cases. And, for West Virginia to be able to not raise the rates for 12 years is remarkable, okay? But much like it was with the workers' comp that had to be changed, and with the teachers' retirement systems that had to be fully funded and cost the state millions and millions and millions of dollars down through the years to get those situations under control, there has to be some control mechanism put in, because it's not really fair to ask all the other taxpayers to continue to fund those programs and get hit with those premiums too. If you want to make everybody happy, open PEIA up to every West Virginian maybe, but that may be a solution. Maybe West Virginia should have their own state insurance program.
Well, there was a bill earlier this year that actually allows a buy-in for Medicaid for those individuals who are right on that cusp where they don't qualify for the expanded Medicaid. That was a part of Obamacare also. And they're having to make a choice between whether they take a job that's going to put them above that threshold and not having health care. And that's something that's prevented people from getting into the workforce. So that was I thought, a very good bill that affects some people like that. But here's where I disagree with you. In other states around us, they're paying teachers not just $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more dollars than they are here. Same thing with our public employees. We can't get correctional officers. So we have to have these services, and we have to pay what we need to get the employees to offer these services, and not just to offer them, but to do a good job. And I think that's the expectation. So it's not really about fairness, because those wages are not fair. Maybe if we were on a balanced playing field with that, I could see the argument in people paying a little bit more. But when you're drowning in your systems, and again, we've got a system with corrections, and I still don't know. We had a $10,000 pay raise that was on the table. It never got taken up in finance. Again, I think that's related to the tax cuts, but people are going to start to die, and teachers are going to leave. And that's what I think is the issue right here, and that's not fair to the people of West Virginia, to the students of West Virginia.
No, I agree with you, and I think that they've done. You guys have done amazing things. You've gotten 4 or 5% pay raises. They end up being $2,300, I think, every time, because that must be the closest denomination to make everybody happy. But the reality is, though, and I understand those comparisons, but let's compare median income in West Virginia to the Virginias and Marylands. And so as we get more businesses in, like the Nucors and the Berkshire Hathaways of the world, and we can drive up the private sector median incomes, then it's understandable, and I think we'll be able to do more, and we should do more. Absolutely, educators need to be taken care of. I'm just not sure it should be through their insurance system. I think it should be through pay raises and pay, and then the insurance systems have to be handled similar to the private sector in that regards. But that's just one take on it. What about, you have been extremely optimistic during this conversation, and that's not been the case necessarily with some other Democrats that we've had on the show. I appreciate that optimism. What drives you to represent the people of Marion County and West Virginia?
Every weekend I go home. Every weekend I go to the food line. I see a couple people here. They tell me about their problems. I try not to get into a capital bubble of thinking. And that's not to say that I don't disagree with a number of issues that are looked at as partisan, but I always look at it as common sense. And every vote that I have, if I can't explain it at home, then I've got to do some thinking about where my priorities are. And every vote that I do make, I feel like I do a thoughtful job of being able to go home and explain exactly why I did something. And that it doesn't always, people don't always agree with me, but I feel like I can be straight up. But I always, when I was growing up, wanted leaders and I wanted government officials who, in my opinion, are no nonsense and got to the issues and tried to work together. That's what we're here for. And so there's a lot, I try not as best I can to talk about politics, because if I can find solutions and I can work with other people, if I can build relationships across the aisle, that's what I was sitting here to do. That's what the people of Marion County told me, that's your job. And so I take a lot of pride in being somebody who works with Republicans, Democrats, and everybody, but I ain't afraid to call people out either. And I'm not afraid to go up against whatever argument, and in fact, I embrace it.
Well, I tell you, Joe, we met, I think maybe the first time, or we may have met before, but we met last year when you were honored by the State Journal as one of the Generation Next 40 Under 40, well-deserved honor. And, I recall that, and I think about, you're one of there's younger legislators, but you're still relatively young down there. How do you see your role to help bring more West Virginians back home? Or keep young people here? What do you shoot for there?
Well, I think number one, it's jobs. And I've stood up on the House floor a number of times this year when there have been debates about some of the economic development initiatives that we've had. For example, with Forum Energy, with Berkshire Hathaway. These are great jobs that are coming. And you know what? I'm happy for them. But I want something for Marion County, for Harrison County, for Mon County. I think that area right now is one of the best growing areas in the state of West Virginia. But I'm willing to help all of West Virginia. But that's what we need. We need more manufacturing jobs. We need derivative jobs. We need new energy jobs. So I think that's the first thing. If I can get somebody from people I went to high school with, they're living in North Carolina or D.C., and there's an opportunity, that's number one. Number two, and I've been very vocal on all these social issues that the legislature keeps beating over and over again, which I think push people away. And I've had people that have called me that may even be looking to come back, and they say, I don't want to be a part of that. And so it's my job, I feel, to stand up and say, you know what, we're not all like this. And even where I'm in a losing battle, and I may be one of 12 or maybe less sometimes, where I'm fighting against a policy that I believe either bullies somebody or treats people differently, or doesn't show the true value of West Virginians, which I think we're very caring people. So I get up and I speak on those issues because I want people to know that not everybody down here is it feels like that's an important issue. And so those are the two things that I try to do. And I hope that we get some more like-minded people. And I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats. I think I want more people that are here that care about the state of West Virginia. I would like there to be more Democrats because I think we're at an imbalance right now. And that, as much as I feel like we've been able to do, I feel like we could do more if we had some more governing from the center.
Well, I tell you what, Joe, we really appreciate you joining us today. We're going to wrap up here. We know you got to get ready for a regular session coming up. So, again, Delegate Joey Garcia of Marion County, in the Democratic minority, but keeping a very positive mindset and moving some things forward. Joey, thank you very, very much for joining us. This is Legislature This Week, and we'll be right back.
Here's the better opportunity you're looking for. Enhancing health and wellness of our community, one patient at a time. Apply today at monhealth.com/careers. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Welcome to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature This Week is sponsored by Mon Health Systems, as well as SEVA WV and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. We are great here on our last show of the legislative session to welcome back West Virginia Public Broadcasting's legislative guy, Randy Yohe. Randy, thanks for joining us again.
Appreciate it. This is the last one, isn't it?
Yeah, this is our last show. Now, you guys are running up every night until Saturday night, correct?
Yeah, and then on Saturday we'll do final hours. We'll be on the air from 8 till midnight.
Lots of coffee that day, Randy. Lots of coffee.
And afterwards, maybe something else.
So what do you think? Would you call this session a huge success, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I think after the balloon drop and ain't no stopping us now yesterday, yes, I think that a lot of people, I mean, we're going to see taxes go down across the board in a number of different areas. Will they have enough money to supplement $754 million or something like that? You know, I talked to President Blair after the justices whoop-de-doo yesterday. And because, I mean, it was just 2 months ago that those guys were at war, that Blair was tossing out, I'm tired of you calling us corrupt, saying we're the swamp. And so I went up to Blair and I said, so, when did you guys start singing Kumbaya? And he said, he just changed his tune completely. We've been working on this for 8 years. It's all about teamwork, Then I asked him, I said, will we have enough money to pave our roads, to get our teachers paid, to get all these initiatives that the legislature has put together? And he said, well, he went back to flat budgets for several years, and that's a go-to for those guys. And then for fiscal responsibility, he said, we're just gonna keep it up. So, I think they're happy about that. DHHR, it'll be interesting to see how this actually gets split up. I talked to a couple people that work within DHHR, and they're just like, what are we going to do? What jobs are we going to keep? Will we have to transfer over? So internally, there's a number of questions there. Charles, well, how about you? What are you seeing?
Well, I was actually about to ask you if President Blair said anything about next steps in tax reform. It's something we asked the governor about last week. About the governor almost sounded like he didn't want to wait on these triggers, that he might call a special session in the summer or the fall. Did President Blair say anything about that, considering how kind of cautious and deliberate their plan was?
He did not, but I was remiss maybe in not asking him. What I did hear from some of Justice's people, though, is that he's going to go back on a statewide tour of some sort very shortly. Like, of course, at the end of this week, maybe the beginning of next week. Is he going to talk about taxes? Will he talk about a Senate run? At the end of every little speech that he gives about how well this tax plan came together as teamwork, he says this is only the beginning. He still wants to see personal income tax eliminated 100%, and he has never strayed away from that goal, as far as I understand.
Mm-hmm. I think that may be a little bit of a cake and eat it too kind of mentality, because like I said, the way we got everybody to the table and to agree on this was from this kind of measured, deliberate approach with these triggers. That's what got everybody to sign off on this. So might be a little bit of buyer's remorse if then we immediately start taking more bites at the apple.
That's a good term, buyer's remorse. For anybody that didn't see what happened yesterday on Tuesday, they had a big balloon drop. They were up on the stage at the Cultural Center, and there was a bunch of legislators behind them. There was one Democrat, Bob Plymel, who I believe his name is on the bill, so and worked closely. And there was no Eric Tarr. he was not on the stage. So I thought a couple of those things were kind of obvious.
That is kind of interesting. That's real interesting. The do you find it we're getting all these. We had more Capito on earlier and started talking about his governor's run. Morrissey has teased out a big announcement for tomorrow, but he's also recently teased out something about the transgender case. So I don't know if it's two separate announcements or if he's going to finally say what he's running for. I would be, and I know Senator Manchin has indicated he's not going to decide till December. I will be very surprised to see Senator Manchin and Jim Justice in the same race. What are your thoughts?
Well, first he's got to get by Mooney. First Justice would have to get by Mooney, right? And Mooney is a Trumpite. There's no doubt about that. He proud, loyal. Now, where that stands in the national and state scheme of things on Trump's popularity is, who knows right now. And I don't know if there's polls in that regard as well. We've asked Justice before. I know you've asked him and I've asked him about a Manchin race. And he said it would be contentious, it would be expensive, it would be watched by the entire country, it would be pivotal, So, the local TV and radio stations are going to make a mint in ads, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there was that poll that came out, recently that was kind of a test of the Republican candidates. And I mean, it's important to note that it was put out by a conservative group, so they have an agenda there. But it said that, Justice was the favored candidate of this hypothetical primary and then a hypothetical general. So, I mean, I don't know if people are considering that as they make their announcements, the strength of his name on paper, if that's factoring into folks' decision making. But as John said, both the governor and the attorney general have been teasing this, for several months now. So I think, when we talked to the governor last week, he told us, yet again that he was, even closer, that he still needed to talk to his family. But I think, again, we can expect some kind of announcement in the next few weeks from both of them.
Yeah, when he signed Senate Bill 10, I went up to him afterwards and whispered in his ear. I said, "Hey, it's March. You told me you were going to say something by the end of February." He said, "Oops." He said, I shouldn't have said that. He said, "But it'll come soon." I guess, and some people are curious about his health and ambulatory abilities as well coming. That's going to be a tough run. He's going to have to do a lot of traveling. He's going to have to go away from Lewisburg, where he likes to home base a lot,
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a curiosity for some people that care.
Yeah, and we'd have to, ask, Jordan or somebody on the governor's staff about this, but I believe the governor has been putting off a knee surgery for about a year now, that I think there was some consideration that he was going to do it last winter, and I'm pretty sure he's never done that. So I think if you're right, if he's gonna run in this race, he might need to have that surgery before and then any kind of downtime. So,
there's still a lot, boys, in education. Right now, we're trying to figure out this Third Grade Success Act. It's very confusing because it looks like the House Education Committee gutted what Hanshaw and Grady wanted in the first place. Speaker Hanshaw and Senate Education Chair Amy Grady, and then substituted another bill that deals with dyslexia and students in first, second, and third grade that need to be proficient in language and math. Our Senate reporter Chris Schultz is diving into that today and tonight on the Legislature Today. I'll let him figure it out. I started looking at it today, and the more I looked into it, the more confused I was, and I think Amy Grady is confused on it as well. Do you have any insight there?
Well, no, we actually asked Moore Capito that, just a little bit ago, and he, apologized that he didn't have a straight answer and said he was going to, get right up from the interview and track that down and figure out what was going on with it. But, we've had kind of the same trouble, tracking that bill. There was that, kind of marathon education meeting the other day that, they had a 9 a.m. meeting and then another one this afternoon that was a list of every hot button topic. And like you said, the bill was intact, and then it got torn down, and then it got struck. And so the same as you, Randy, we've been having a little bit of trouble, gauging where that stands.
Well,
It'll be
when
interesting
the,
to see
when
how
the
it shakes out.
delegates and senators don't even understand it, then good luck to Chris on figuring that out. I do not think that is included in what Justice talked about in the State of the State, and what Hanshaw put together was the $40 million to get teachers' aides in the first and second grade. I think that's separate, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's what I know. Amy Grady was quoted the other day of saying she was confused by it because the House put the budget through and the money's in the budget for those positions and for those programs, but now the bill may not be there that calls for the additional aides as well as additional funding for the programs. The problem that I have here is the fact that, it's come up so late in the session because those were very focused goals of Speaker Hanshaw and Senator Grady, and Governor Justice appeared to be on board. So it will be very disappointing, I think, to West Virginians, and it will be harmful to the future if we don't get some additional support in the classrooms. And this is not a bill, I think that people have to understand this. It is not a bill that, it's just going to make the teacher's job easier, that perhaps it will. That's what we want. We want teachers to be able to spend more time with individual students who are struggling. This is a bill, this is a concept to help the younger generation of West Virginians be prepared for the future. This has been a sticking point of mine since the pandemic forced so many cancellations, and these school systems and the governor and the legislators must do something more. The key word there is more to get this happening, because what we've done, what the pandemic, let's not say what we did. We're not going to blame, we can get into the rhetorical arguments all we want to, but of whose fault it was that the classrooms were shut down. That's done and over. That ship sailed. We have to deal with the damage, and to allow kids to progress through the school system without the fundamentals for a future is morally wrong. So hopefully our lawmakers will address it.
It all springboarded from those national studies that showed that West Virginia was at the bottom of the pack when it came to those young people learning these things, and everybody said, oh my gosh, we got to do something about it. So Hanshaw had been pushing this for a couple of years. So if you don't have a chance to see the legislature tonight, it'll be on our website, wvpublic.org, and I'm sure that Chris Schultz will get it figured out.
Well, and on a more, macro level, I think, for all that we talk about, super duper majorities and complete Republican control, this issue, several others that we've seen over the course of the legislative session kind of indicate that, the Republican caucus isn't always of one mind, one voice. And even on something like this that seems, ostensibly, bipartisan, it's really hard to whip everybody and get them going in the same direction at times.
Some people say that maybe the House and Senate are holding certain bills hostage right now. If you don't give us this and that, we're not going to give you this and that, which I never even thought about that until a couple people brought it up. Maybe I'm naive in that way, and that think that, we're going to do something that's proper. But for example, Senate Bill 613 that they've been laying over day after day after day that deals with these birthing centers and certificates of need. We're going to see if that's on third reading today, and they believe that since the abortion ban, there's going to be more births, and there's going to be places for these people to go. Are these places going to be qualified? So that gets into that argument as well. So these last couple of days are going to be pretty interesting.
Real quick on that CON, it's been laid over, 3 days now? It's been on third reading.
If not four, I think.
4? And then the other one I found interesting, I know there's a lot of interest. We talk about school systems, but, sports always gets people's attention. The transfer bill, I heard it was moved to the inactive calendar.
Oh, has it been? Yeah, because that was gutted out as well in a number of ways. I haven't kept up on that one, but that's interesting.
I saw a tweet yesterday that said it had got moved to what do they call it? Legislative purgatory.
Yep,
and would
the house
languish
calendar.
on the inactive calendar. Hey, listen, Randy, we know you got a full day ahead. We're going to wrap up here and let you go. Randy Yohe, West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature Today will be on the air at 6 o'clock tonight, Thursday and Friday, and then from 8 to midnight, they're going to have the countdown show from Charleston. Randy Yohe and the group at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Great job, guys.
Your heart is in the best hands. Mon Health Heart and Vascular is the highest ranked cardiovascular program in the state of West Virginia by the American College of Cardiology. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Welcome to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature This Week is sponsored by Mon Health Systems, as well as SEVA WV and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. Joining us now from the halls, the rotunda of the Capitol, is Glenville State President Dr. Mark Manchin. Doc, how are you today?
I'm doing well, John. Good to see you. Good to see the people in Clarksburg and all around your viewing area.
Well, I'll tell you what, Doc, we are, first question I got to ask you is there any rumor to you running for governor?
No, absolutely not. I enjoy being president. I much prefer to be president than governor.
Well, I thought we'd start with a little humor there, Doc, but we know
There
you're
you
down
go.
there in Charleston on some very serious matters, and you've made several trips to Charleston. There was even a Glenville State Day at the Capitol.
There was.
But in terms of the deferred maintenance bill that still remains out there, what's your take on it? Where does it stand, and what's it mean for Glenville State?
Well, we just left the Speaker's office about 20 minutes ago, and there appears to be $20 million per four-year institutions. That will be, I know that the term game changer is often overused, but John, this will be a game changer for deferred maintenance. And what the term implies is that it needs to be done. It needs to upgrade our higher education facilities, the four-year institutions, and it's been deferred because we simply don't have the resources. This will allow us to make some major renovations, not only renovations, but new construction, and really upgrade our four-year institution. So we're very excited about that. Of course, I am, being a former legislator myself, I'm aware that until the governor signs it, there's nothing there. But it is in the budget bill. We had a chance to look at it. We just left the Speaker's office. We understand that the House, or the Senate now, is on board with that part of the House version. At least it's my understanding. But we'll wait to see once the governor signs it. But the deferred maintenance is incredible. It'll be a great boon to the four-year institutions over the years. Higher education, because of simply we didn't have the resources. Now, because of the budget surplus, and it's a one-time budget supplement, but man, it'll do a great thing for not only Glenville State University, but four-year institutions around the state.
Well, and I know that, it's for each of the institutions, but, Glenville State University recently, you guys celebrated your 150th year. You guys are deeply entrenched in the culture and history of West Virginia. You were set up as a normal school to teach teachers how to teach, and I know you've gotten back to those roots some, but that's got to be, I've been on your campus, been blessed to be on your campus before. You guys have done a lot with private endowments and fundraising and doing as much as you can. But you've got some older buildings there. $20 million is huge for you guys.
Oh, it's incredibly huge. Clark Hall, which is probably next to the clock tower, is the most iconic part of our campus. And we've been struggling with the roof. We've been struggling with upgrades and so on and so forth. This will allow us not only Clark Hall, but also upgrade our science facilities as we prepare to really grow our College of Health Sciences, which is very, very important. And this means so much to us that will allow us to have state-of-the-art facilities, state-of-the-art, all that implies furniture, technology, upgrade technology, and allow us to be very vibrant school, along with the other schools around the state, will allow us to really compete and prepare our young men and women for the future. And that's what this is all about, John, as you're well aware. Education means everything to me. I've grown up around educators, and in my years in Harrison County were some of the greatest times I've ever had. But this also allows us at the higher education level to really have the state-of-the-art facilities that will allow us to prepare our young men and women for the future. And you mentioned, which that we originally, we just celebrated our 151st year. Originally, we were a normal school, which means, and that was interesting. Where does the term normal? That and it's a normal education to prepare teachers back in the day. And though it's anecdotal, nearly half of the teachers in the state of West Virginia at one time either went through Glenville or had brothers or sisters or their family who went through Glenville and are teaching in the state of West Virginia, or band directors or teachers or administrators or coaches. What an impact Glenville State University has had, and over the years, Glenville State College and Glenville State Normal School in the early days. So what an impact it's had around the state of West Virginia, and that I'm proud to be a part of that. We want to grow our university. Also, I'd like to mention, John, that the governor put in his budget, and it appears that it will indeed be passed, $20 million for nursing, of which it appears right now that Glenville will get a part of that to continue to grow our nursing program, which has really taken off. We were able to work closely with Marshall University. We had all of our seats filled this year, which through Marshall, and right now we have over 100 students who have shown interest in our next year's nursing program. So we're excited about that opportunity, that we may be able to upgrade facilities out there, unused space at the Waco Center, that will allow us to have state-of-the-art nursing facilities and prepare our future teachers and our future nurses, which are two of the greatest needs in the state of West Virginia.
Well, Mark, also with us right now is Charles Young. Charles, I think you have some questions for Dr. Manchin.
Sure. Yeah, Doc, I want to ask you about the campus carry bill, SB 10.
Sure.
The governor's already signed it into law. You know, this is I think the third or fourth year in a row this bill was attempted. Each time this came up, you know, your counterparts at WVU, Marshall, Concord spoke out against this. We had a very robust public hearing earlier in the session where the majority of folks spoke out against it. So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about that, but could we start
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that being signed into law?
Well, and to be honest with you, Charles, I'm intricately familiar with the legislative process. Sure. In talking to legislators this year, the bill was going to move, and though the necessity for the bill, I don't know, but there are a number of people who are on both sides of this issue, and I wasn't necessarily supportive of it. They asked me to come down and speak against it. I realized that the governor, both houses were very interested in passing this bill, that the bill was indeed going to pass. So I didn't think that that anything would be served by opposing it, though I'm not necessarily supportive of it. I don't know that there's a necessity for that. I'm not sure, and I was made aware at Glenville that a number of students had already had arms, guns, in either the vehicle or on their person, and we perhaps didn't even know about it. It's an unfortunate situation that we're facing here, not only clearly in West Virginia, and in fact, most of the vast majority of people are responsible gun owners, and I support that and respect that. But there's been a rash throughout the United States of issues and guns being used for mass murder and things of that nature, which obviously causes us concern. But it is my understanding that we have some flexibility in this legislation that will allow us to put some restriction on that. And so we'll be looking at that once we get a chance to sit down and look at the bill, exactly what it allows us to do. But we want to make all of our students safe. And one of the major issues that I often refer to when talking to a parent, there are three basic areas that we look at when we ask a young man or young woman or a parent to send their child to Glenville State University. First and foremost is the health and safety of their children. And we feel very strongly about that. We're going to expand the number of cameras, lighting, throughout our campus. We've expanded the number of security officers we have. So health and safety of our students is first and foremost. I recognize that there are people who are falling on both sides of this. It is what it is. We'll be able to address it, and we'll work with it once we have a chance to look at the legislation and see what we can do to make sure our students are safe. That's all that matters. And though I recognize it was very controversial, but I also realize and understand the legislative process. The bill was going to move regardless if we come down and oppose it or for it. So I recognize that.
Sure. And just to clarify, Doc, the extra cameras and security personnel that you mentioned, are those initiatives you guys were doing anyway, or is that in direct response to this being signed into law?
No, those were initiatives we were undertaking anyhow.
I got you.
And again, there's nothing, Charles, more important than the health and safety of our students, our employees, our visitors. That's paramount in the way that we look at that. We make that our first priority. Our second, certainly as important, is the preparation academic, and then the third is the campus life and social activities. That I think the college experience is a major part of college going. But first and foremost is the health and safety. So yeah, we were taking that initiative anyhow. Sure. And in fact, we had been in the process of signing a contract for additional lighting throughout the campus as well as cameras. So we think that that's very, very important.
Okay, and then just one last thing on this, that, WVU had already put out an estimate of, I think, at least $400,000 they thought they would have to spend on kind of initiatives like you were talking about as a result of this. Sounds like you guys need to delve a little bit more into the language, but do you have any idea as of yet, the cost of implementing this for you guys?
No, there is no cost in implementing. There's a cost in addressing perhaps concerns that people have. So we will sit down, we will look at it. We've already, like I said earlier, we've already been addressing the health and safety of our students and our employees prior to the passing of the bill. I was made aware that it appears that this bill was going to move anyhow, so we were aware of it. We are preparing for it. I think WVU, obviously there's 25,000 students at WVU. There's about 1,600 at Glenville, so there is a difference. But we'll be looking at. I don't think that it'll be necessary for metal detectors, things of that nature. We certainly will be working with our security officers in addressing that. And right now, you still, in fact, it may even make it even safer. And I think that was the intent of those sponsors, was that it were required to have a gun or to have any kind of arms is that you have to be trained and get a certification or get a licensure, which shows anybody who has that licensure has gone through the training to carry a concealed weapon, and we feel comfortable that it very well could make our students and our employees safer.
Well, Doc, we're going to move back to some renovations and upgrades. And by the way, I have to comment on the rather spiffy new uniforms your security police force will be wearing. I think you had to design the royal blue neon ties.
We looked at that. In fact, they got me one, so I may be wearing one before too long.
Well, I tell you what, you've always been known as a spiffy dresser, but let's seriously, you've spiffed up the campus down in Glenville State with a number of renovations. Yourself, you've credited your board. Obviously, the campus seems to have come together really well. Tell us about that development and about enrollment. How are things going?
Going very well, John, and yes, we have a which probably for a lot of people doesn't mean a whole lot, but we have a Starbucks on campus now. I've never been a Starbucks guy. I'm a Go-Mart guy. I go to Go-Mart get my coffee, but everybody's so excited about the Starbucks. We have a bookstore that we have built, and it's now on campus where students can go and we're called bundling, getting our books. That you could do so many things online now. They walk in, get their bundle, and they're good to go. So we've totally renovated our cafeteria in the Rusty Musket. Where students now can, and I'm amazed. I wish it was back when I was in school. You can go online and order pizza. You can order hamburgers and all these great things that you could do now online. You couldn't have done even 15, 20 years ago. So we're making some major renovations. As I said earlier, if and that's why we're here in Charleston to see what the legislature indeed is going to do. But it appears that we'll have the funding necessary to make some major renovations to our science hall, Clark Hall, major renovations and new build for our nursing, which we hope to put out at the Waco Center. There's about 8,600 square feet of unfinished space in that beautiful Waco Center that we hope to build and put our nursing program in there, as well as our College of Health Sciences over the next several years, where we'll have master's level programs, physician's assistants, we'll have counseling services, athletic training, things of that nature. That is our goal over the next 3 to 5 years. So, and the campus is bucolic. It's trees all around. It's in the heart of West Virginia. It's 15 miles off the interstate. I'm sure when people are coming down coming to the interstate and get off, they say, "Wonder what we're going to find at the end of this 15 miles." And we want to make it exciting. It's a beautiful campus. We want to continue to grow it. Paint. It's amazing what a little paint will do. But I like shiny objects. I like shiny things. So we're going to make that place shine. I can tell you that.
Well, I tell you what, it is amazing. It's a great campus, very friendly atmosphere. And you go to the Waco Center. The Waco Center is like state of the art. You know, you do not expect to see the Waco Center in Glenville, but it is a fabulous facility. You know, here's the most important question. Are you predicting another national championship? Because little old Glenville State isn't so little anymore. National women's basketball champions last year. Back in the tournament again, just won the MEC. So what's the team's chances this year?
Very good, John. That's interesting. It's an interesting question. And by the way, the Waco Center, when we won the national championship last year, we had a big celebration. We invited Coach Huggins, and he was sitting up on the stage with me, and he looked around. He says, nearly half of the where he has played in Division I, where his teams have played, aren't as nice as the Waco Center. So that was a great compliment. But Coach Stevens, I said, Coach, she said, now, Doc, don't you expect us to do as well next year? I said, I don't care if you win the national championship next year. Just national runners-up is good enough for me. So we'll see. Who knows? We're going to really meet some great teams starting Friday evening. We're playing Elizabeth City, which is in North Carolina. There's some great teams in the regionals. We have a long way to go, but I can tell you what, Coach Stevens and her team is incredible. She's doing an incredible job coaching, one of the best coaches. In fact, she's the MEC Coach of the Year for the 4th time. And last year she was the National Coach of the Year. So she's doing some outstanding things. The recruitment's been great. All 5 players, it's really interesting, all 5 players are brand new. The entire team she lost last year. She was bringing only 5% of the scoring from last year's team return, but did a great job. So we're excited about it. We're excited about hosting the regional, and we'll see how it all plays out.
Well, I'll tell you what, Doc, we appreciate you joining us. Dr. Mark Manchin, he was the former superintendent in schools here in Harrison County, as many of you well know, and now the president of Glenville State University, which is growing, adding master's programs, and enjoying great success, and brought West Virginia their first national basketball championship.
That's true.
Doc, any closing comment for us?
Oh, well, no, I just appreciate John and what you're doing and the West Virginia media. You've been terrific. You've got the message out. You've been great supporters of education, and I'm proud to be that I have the opportunity to speak to you today. I know it's going out to a lot of different people who really support education, and I want to say how much I appreciate you and Andy Nice and all the people who make this possible, getting our message out. I really appreciate that.
Well, I tell you what, we appreciate you, Dr. Manchin, and for Legislature This Week, we're out.
Here's the better opportunity you're looking for. Enhancing health and wellness of our community, one patient at a time. Apply today at monhealth.com/careers. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.
Welcome to Legislature This Week, brought to you by West Virginia News, the State Journal, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Legislature This Week is sponsored by Mon Health Systems, as well as SEVA WV and the West Virginia High Technology Consortium. As we wrap up the show this year, we are joined by two of the leaders in healthcare in West Virginia. David Ramsey is the CEO and president of Vandalia Health, and Dave Goldberg is the Mon Health Systems president and CEO and executive vice president of Vandalia Health. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us this morning.
Thanks so much.
Very well. And also with us is West Virginia News Governmental Affairs reporter Charles Young. Charles, you're going to start the question and answer session here with the Davids. Go right ahead.
Sure. So the first thing I think we wanted to ask you guys about is the recently announced partnership between Vandalia and Davis. Tell us a little bit about, how that benefits both parties and what changes that'll bring about.
Well, it's a one we're very excited about having. Davis is really part of our system now. Vandalia, with the merger of the CMC Health System and the Mon Health System, was created September 1 of last year. So we're still very young in that regard, and we will be 10 hospitals here shortly, and then having Davis come on board in a very closely affiliated way. Community is still operating their hospital, owns their hospital on a day-to-day basis. We're working with them on a number of issues. They've joined our health network, and then our what we call provider hospital organization. So we're working with them on relationships with various managed care companies in the state, and bringing opportunities for them to work with to provide quality oversight to their patients that might be insured by the various insurance companies in our state. And then we will be bringing telemedicine to them. They're very excited about a telemedicine program for nephrology or kidney problems, kidney doctors, so that they can do dialysis in the hospital going forward. And then we have other relationships and opportunities to work together. Mon is there to work with them on the cardiology side, with lots of conversations taking place in that regard. So, we're taking advantage of every opportunity to help keep people local in their community for care. The dialysis program is just an example where they would send out about 100 patients a year from the community for dialysis that have acute needs for dialysis. So they're sick, they're in the hospital, they need dialysis. We think we can keep the majority of those patients there close to home. And it's such a burden for many West Virginians to travel and travel for healthcare. It's usually not just one trip. So, that's where we are at this point in time. And, the Mon Health System has had a cardiac program in the community there for years now. And so, that's knitting together very, very nicely as well.
I thought that was the case. David Goldberg, you guys have had a pretty long relationship up there in Randolph County, correct?
Yeah, we've been there for almost 25 years with independent doctors who provided cardiology care there. And then right before I got here in October of 2018, we opened up a heart center right there in Elkins, I'd say right around the corner from the hospital. So we're really looking forward with our cardiologist, our vascular surgeon who does outreach, to partner with Davis to keep care local, stress tests, other diagnostics and such. So we're real excited. Dr. Brad Warden, our executive director of our Heart Vascular Institute, and the team have been meeting to talk about what does the community need and how do we keep care close to home.
Let's segue back to the legislature a little bit. I know you guys have been following some key legislation and have been advocating for ways to make healthcare better in West Virginia, and we applaud you for that. David Ramsey, your thoughts on the current legislative session, and what are you guys watching? What's been good for healthcare, and what are the concerns that are emerging?
Well, I think anything that the legislature passes that will help improve the economy of our state, retain our citizens, and attract new citizens to the state is nothing but positive. The tax changes that the governor signed should have a positive impact on all of us in our state, the quality of life in our state. So that's first and foremost. I mean, what's the environment in which we live in across West Virginia? And then from a specifics to healthcare, the legislature is passed the PEIA bill, which is wonderful for healthcare and really for access to individuals that have the PEIA as their insurance. PEIA is historically paid well below cost for hospitals, below Medicaid. This bill will raise reimbursement to just above the Medicare reimbursement level. It will just ensure going into the future that people that have that insurance will have access to care across our state. It's I know it's a hardship on many folks that have currently insured with PEIA, but I think they'll see over the next couple of years that this is really a good thing.
Well, and I think, it had gotten to the point where I know Wheeling Hospital has said they weren't going to accept it starting July 1st. You had an op-ed that appeared in many of our publications as well as the State Journal talking about, hey, it isn't just a problem for that hospital, it's a problem for all of us. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they were only paying at like 55 to 58% of Medicare rate, and now it's up to 110, right?
That's right. That's correct. That's effective July 1. It'll go into effect. So it's a positive thing when you look at the overall. Certainly, individuals that are insured by PEIA will be impacted. The other thing that is again an impact for individual families, but in the overall will help the solvency of PEIA. Is the bill also calls for spouses that can get insurance elsewhere or have insurance offered to them by their employer, they will have to take that insurance. And that saves millions of dollars for PEIA and will just ensure its ability to keep their rates low and to ensure the solvency of PEIA going forward. So, it's a hardship on some of our citizens, but in the overall, again, over the next few years, I think people will realize how important this legislation is.
David Goldberg.
We could stay right there for just a second. I want to follow up about something in that op-ed, Mr. Ramsey. In that op-ed, you said that we needed a systemic solution, not a short-term fix. And it sounds like you're pretty positive about this bill. Do you think this is a long-term solution, or is this a Band-Aid that we're going to have to circle back around and readdress?
No, I think it is. It's certainly we'll see what the future brings. Can't predict everything, but I think, frankly, adding the spousal provision was a big step in ensuring the long term. I don't know, most organizations, most employers have had that provision for a decade or more now. So it's not unusual, and it will save millions each year for PEIA, which again will ensure it's not a Band-Aid going forward.
Yeah, that's actually, that stems back to the Affordable Care Act, which didn't require insurances to have spousal coverage, because I know there's a number of companies that don't offer spousal coverage.
Right.
So that then those people would still be able to get into PEIA. But if it is offered, it makes sense that they should either take that insurance that's provided by their employee or have to pay a little bit more to get into PEIA. David Goldberg, your thoughts on that, or perhaps segueing to Certificate of Need, which is on its third reading for the fourth consecutive day. Why don't you roll with it there, David?
Yeah, I agree with everything Dave said. I think that this is a good opportunity from a PEIA perspective to bring stability to the program. I've said many times, PEIA, Medicare, Medicaid, they're all funding mechanisms to provide coverage for people on those plans, just like if you're in a commercial plan, where I think we have an opportunity moving forward. And the Vandalia Health Network is an example of an opportunity that we've started, is to reduce the cost of care by improving outcomes. I mean, we have some of the highest cancer rates, diabetes rates, COPD or lung issues. I can go on and on. So what we've really focused doing is partnering with insurance companies, providers across the state to reduce the cost of care and get people into a primary care home, and then make sure that they're getting the follow-up they need. I think this approach is really going to reduce cost of care and improve our outcomes, which then reduces the burden on the state to have to pay, or the federal government who funds Medicare and Medicaid. And then, of course, it comes from our paychecks to be able to fund some of Medicare and Medicaid. So I think I applaud the legislature and the governor for some of the leadership they're taking and moving forward. As I segue into certificate of need, I've had the privilege, as is Dave, to work in many different states. I've worked in certificate of need states like Virginia. I've worked in non-certificate of need states like Texas and Pennsylvania. I'm a big fan of certificate of need. Rational healthcare planning allows us to make sure in a state like ours that the majority of our patients are either on Medicare, Medicaid, or PEIA. It gives us the ability to keep costs contained and have services in the right locations, so we can have high volume programs like open heart at CAMC. We don't need to have open heart programs in small hospitals all across the state that don't have enough surgeons or patients to have good outcomes. That healthcare planning is reviewed with the state, the healthcare authority. Taking that away gives me grave concerns for the future of outcomes and access across low volume hospitals delivering babies. You want to be at a place that delivers thousands of babies a year, not dozens. You don't want to go to a transplant center that does dozens. You want to go to a transplant center that does hundreds and thousands of cases. So I have grave concerns with it. That being said, it's 2023 and opportunities to modernize. CON makes sense. One of the areas that's concerned me coming back to West Virginia is as CAMC Health System and Mon-El System, we have to apply. If we want to purchase a practice or expand a physician practice, we have to apply for the state. But an independent doctor can open up a location anywhere they want to go. Those are the things we should be addressing, but not what's on deck now, which is this campus only, that within the four walls that you can expand programs without kind of regulatory oversight. I think bad decisions can be made.
David Ramsey, your take on the CON situation?
Well, just like David said, I mean, he's right. He's just on target from the standpoint of it's in our view, it's sort of picking winners and losers. Legislature, there's a provision in the bill that allows a physician group with 7 locations to have an MRI. Well, why not 2 locations? Why not 1 location? Why 7? I mean, it's clearly aimed to a group somewhere in the state. So even this bill, which is we call the Thomas bill, frankly, Thomas Hospital bill, because it was proposed by the Thomas Hospital over the last 2 or 3 years, last 2 or 3 sessions, was not supported primarily by the Senate. But dynamics have changed in leadership in the Senate, and so now it's a bill that is worthy, but it's to David's point, what the unique aspect about West Virginia compared to many states is that there are no public dollars going into hospitals. If you go to most states, there's a county hospital, a city hospital, a state hospital that receives public money. In West Virginia, that does not exist. So there's not a tax at the county level anywhere in our state that goes for indigent care, that goes for medical education, goes to support what we call safety net services, level 1 trauma centers, level 3 NICUs, et cetera. And what the state has done, which certainly has helped the citizenry and saved lots of money, is they've established a hub and spoke through planning, where you have the large tertiary centers and the population centers. Those tertiary centers are also your centers for education. CMC has approaching 300 residents and fellows now. I'm sorry, 200 residents and fellows. You have those in Huntington. You have the same in Morgantown. So the planning process in our state has enabled that to do it at virtually no cost to the state. So now we're just going to throw it out the window and say any hospital can do anything they want, whether it can provide it at a quality level, a reasonable cost level, and it will begin to deteriorate further, in my opinion, healthcare in our state, and will erode what we've built over the last 50 years, really, through healthcare planning.
Do you have a feeling that, because I mean, as we've mentioned several times on today's show, it's on its third reading for the fourth straight day. Somebody's applying a brake. Do you have a feeling one way or the other? Does it get pushed through, or do you think it gets stopped?
Well, I think we believe it'll get through. That there are some other bills that the House and the Senate are not agreeing on, and they're they're challenging each other to approve their piece of legislation in order to move Senate Bill 613 through.
Have you tried to talk to Governor Justice at all about it?
We've talked not directly to the Governor Justice, but to folks in his office. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
good.
there's a feeling that somehow CON is not competitive, that it's not free market and so forth. Well, healthcare is not free market to begin with. Just CMC, for example, 82% of our patients, we're told what we will be paid. Medicare tells us what they'll pay us. Medicaid tells us what they'll pay us. PEIA tells us what they'll pay us. We don't have a choice. So it's not free market. We don't get to charge what we would like to charge. So, it's just a misunderstanding. Healthcare is a complicated industry. It's not your normal build a widget, sell a widget, have a product, sell a product. It's just very different. And most frankly, legislators just don't understand the industry. So, and yet, we're all in favor of a free market, but there's a nuances certainly to healthcare.
Absolutely. Charles, I think you have a question about the rural healthcare aspect of West Virginia.
Yeah, and I think this will kind of tie together some of the various threads of our conversation here. But according to the American Hospital Association, 136 rural hospitals have closed between 2010 and 2021. In 2020, there were 19 hospitals. That was the record that closed rural hospitals. So could you guys talk a little bit about Vandalia's mission to address this in West Virginia, and how, partnerships like the one we talked about with Davis, are part of that solution?
Yeah, David, why don't you pick this one?
Yeah. So, I'll use Mon as an example. Back in 2019, I remember then Congressman McKinley calling me and saying there's this small little hospital in north central West Virginia that's struggling, Grafton City Hospital. I didn't even know where Grafton City was as I was coming back to the state at the time. And I remember driving out there about 4 or 5 months into my tenure at Mon. And I fell in love with the community, Taylor County, fell in love with the people there. Very old facility, but it had less than 2 days cash on hand. Very infrequent specialists being able to come out and provide care locally. And while we were in our turnaround at the time, we thought it was important to partner with Grafton City Hospital. And now they are thriving. We bring specialists local. Many of those cases for higher level care either come up to Morgantown or over into Harrison County or anywhere in between. That's I think an example of where scale matters, where you can bring a regional system like Mon to come into some of the rural communities and then provide stability. We've done that with Highland Clarksburg and Harrison County, where we have a strategic relationship like Dave explained with Davis. We have one with Minnie Hamilton down in Gilmer. So Dave's vision at Vandalia is to be able to keep care local and bring all of these organizations together to be able to stabilize access, affordability, and high quality. He could talk much better about me with Greenbrier Valley Medical Center coming into the Vandalia family and soon Plateau. Those are just examples, along with more than 160 locations we have across the state of West Virginia, in Maryland, in Pennsylvania, now in Virginia through these acquisitions to bring care close to home through telemedicine and specialists coming in. We are a rural state, and we know people don't want to drive to the big cities of Charleston or Morgantown. So we need to make it easier to get care to people so we can reduce the cost, get them into a primary care home, and improve their outcomes.
David
Dave,
Ramsey.
I'll pitch it back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, the small hospitals, it just be, the expense of regulation, the expense of the electronic medical records and other IT systems to operate hospitals now. It's a burden that many small hospitals can't endure. And then add to that having the expertise local, or even have access to that expertise to run your IT systems, to keep your medical record system up and running, to avoid cyber attacks, to provide the security that's needed. Part of that is what's causing the demise of some small hospitals and small other healthcare entities in rural states. And then just access to the subspecialty physician coverage. If you don't have doctors, you don't have hospitals, and if you don't have hospitals, you don't have doctors. So for the community, it goes hand in hand.
Well, I will tell you, I think it's amazing what Mon Health did there at Grafton City Hospital, because 2 days cash flow is some would shut down with only 2 days cash flow, and to be able to do what you've done there. We recently bought the newspaper in that community. That community is still very much thriving and active, like many smaller communities in West Virginia. It's had its challenges, but it's still a very important part of North Central West Virginia and the state as a whole. And I think that people assume, because they see large hospitals in Charleston or large hospitals in Morgantown or Huntington, or the case may be, that, people can just drive from Grafton there, or people can drive from down in Boone County and automatically get to CAMC, as the case may be. But the reality of it is that when you need healthcare, you need it to be close at hand.
Right.
You urgently need it. And even, with our aging population and our roads, it's not easy for 80-year-olds to jump in the car and drive an hour or more to get healthcare if they can have it in their community. What you guys have done with Vandalia. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah, if I could say a great example of that, you're spot on. We've brought gynecologists out to do follow-up visits for our older population to Grafton. This summer, thanks to Senators Manchin, Senator Capito, and again, former Congressman McKinley, they got us a grant to be able to start a chemotherapy program in Preston County at Preston Memorial Hospital, so those patients don't have to drive all the way into Morgantown for chemotherapy in the heart of winter, those windy roads, so we can get care close to home. So to Dave's point about the coordination of care, we can only do that as an integrated delivery system where we bring the clinical expertise, the infrastructure, and to do it affordably, and to bring those level of care there. And it's so important to our neighbors to be close. You're spot on.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, it's been a great session, and we certainly appreciate Mon Health and Vandalia Health's role here in West Virginia. David Ramsey, would you like to wrap up, and we'll give Dave Goldberg a chance as well?
Well, we're very excited about the future together in West Virginia. We have lots of other opportunities that we're looking forward to this next year, and in conversations with a number of folks. So there's a lot of positive taking place in healthcare in our state, and to David's point, we really want to bring healthcare closer to home, and not just healthcare, but quality healthcare to address the community's needs.
David Goldberg, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Dave. We didn't really talk about telemedicine, but CAMC did more than 50,000 telemedicine visits last year, and Mon Health did 13,000. So we're not only delivering it in the moment, but we're also doing it through technology. The other thing I like just to end on is, we talked a lot about economic development and legislation. I mean, one of the things that I'm really excited about that's in front of the Senate and the House is early education. I lived in San Antonio at one point, and we called it pre-K for SA. And I applaud Senator Grady and Roger Hanshaw, our speaker, for really trying to bring education to the early ages of K through 3, to be able to get aides in the office, help improve math, arithmetic, that is math, reading, writing, because we need to build our economic base, which is workers. And they have to be able to read, they have to be able to do math, they have to be able to produce. If we don't have that infrastructure, people leave. And then we don't create businesses that bring population back home. So the legislature has a lot on deck. We're real excited. And to Dave's point, I think you can tell culturally we're so aligned. The future's bright.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, we are proud to have David Ramsey, the CEO and president of Vandalia Health, and Dave Goldberg, the Mon Health Systems president and CEO and executive vice president of Vandalia Health, here on our final session of legislature this week. It's been a good year. Lots of things happening the last few days. We remind you to check in with our partner, West Virginia Public Broadcasting, for their show at 6 o'clock each evening, and for the countdown show from 8 p.m. to midnight as the final bills make their way through the legislative process. For Legislature This Week, I'm John Miller and Charles Young. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next year.
Your heart is in the best hands. Mon Health Heart and Vascular is the highest ranked cardiovascular program in the state of West Virginia by the American College of Cardiology. Choose Mon Health. Feel the difference.